Curse words and strong opinions. That is what's ahead of us because today, in the end of year special, we will review comedian Bill Burr's thoughts on breastfeeding in public. He covered the topic on his Monday morning podcast a few years ago with his wife, Nia Renée Hill. At the time of the conversation, they didn't have children yet, so they're not sort of experts of the field, but they're open and honest about their opinion. And I think what we hear from them is the commonly held views and knowledge about breastfeeding in society. I will only play the relevant parts of the conversation and hopefully add some thoughts that will put their views in a very different light. So enjoy the talk.
Breastfeeding in public. Dear Billy Crimson Tits. Recently I was traveling through Colombia with my girlfriend. We were in the airport when we randomly saw a woman breastfeeding her baby just out in the open in one of the terminal waiting areas. What was weird is as she was doing it, she was looking around, making eye contact with everyone who was walking by, the way a dog looks around a park while it unloads a dump.
Wow, we are off to a strong start, right? We'll come back to these comments a little bit later, but for now, we'll listen further into the conversation.
My initial reaction was saying to my girlfriend, "Oh man, that's gross. She is breastfeeding." Apparently, this opened the floodgates of feminism. My girlfriend responded, "Why is that gross? That's hypocritical. You men love to see boobs, but when it's for nature's purpose, you complain."
I have to stop it here for a minute to talk about this word nature and natural. It's often or exclusively used to make a case for breastfeeding. It pops up in this conversation as well a few more times later, like here.
I feel like a child, being fed from its mother, which is a very natural thing.
Words like nature or natural, oddly enough, make a very weak case for breastfeeding. Technically, it is a true word to describe breastfeeding, and it might have been a good word to use 20 years ago. But when we refer to it as natural nowadays, it instantly identifies breastfeeding with a kind of alternative, trendy, wholesome activity, and nothing more than that. Not something that needs to be taken seriously. Even worse, the word natural is now strongly associated with this la-la land, where things like aloe vera socks and aura cleansing sprays exist. No, it's a medical issue, and the effects are as real as they come. Less breast milk, more cases of diabetes. Less breast milk, more chronic diseases. Less breast milk, more cases of infectious morbidity. Breast milk is the liquid that has the capacity to lower the risk of adverse health outcomes. Full stop. Natural is not the reason, medical is the reason.
When it's for nature's purpose, you complain. I then responded, well, the ass purpose is to shit, and men are turned on by a nice ass. Are women now going to start taking dumps publicly since that is the butt's primary purpose? That's a great point.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, it is.
It's not the same at all.
What are you talking about?
Shitting in public cannot be compared to breastfeeding in public. They are not the same thing at all. That's what's called a false equivalency.
I don't know. It's both you're excreting something from your body and people don't want to look at it.
There are tons of reasons, of course, why these are not the same, but I doubt any of those reasons would make his comparison invalid for him. So instead, let's follow his logic and focus on how perception works. Here's another example, something I am sure he finds perfectly normal to see out in the public. It involves a body part with sexual relevance. It involves bodily fluids. And there was a time when people would have been grossed out seeing it out in the open. It is called kissing. The reason why such an example doesn't pop in his mind is because it is already normalized. He already thinks it is perfectly normal to see it. If he ever kissed his girlfriend in public, He was able to do so because in the past, people, same as him, were able to shift their own perception about it.
She responded that there is an obvious difference.
Yeah.
Since then, my girlfriend has been sending me all these pro-public breastfeeding videos of moms defending the
now
action.
You did it.
I find it amusing how women all defend it and encourage it, but they know how creepy it is, so most of them won't actually publicly breastfeed with their own kids.
This is a good place to refer back to the earlier comparison the lad made about the mom looking around like a dog. Let's not focus on how unflattering the comparison is, but we will look at what he is actually describing. But first, let me add another segment here where Nia shares some thoughts about a breastfeeding mom too.
Like a lot of guys in relationships.
There are some people that are just modest about that kind of stuff. I had a friend over not too long ago, and she brought her 6-month-old with her, and she had to breastfeed him. And when he was off the thing, you know, when he would drink some, and then he'd be sort of like looking around, she was like covering her boob, and it was just her and I in there. And there was a part of me that wanted to be like, you don't have to like cover your breasts in front of me, but that was a natural reaction.
I'm not arguing his thing. I don't give a if women breastfeed in public.
Yeah.
I don't give a
I'm just saying that there are women who are, and I'm sure the reason why she was looking around like, you know, a dog taking a is because she's thinking, oh God, who's going to judge me? Who's going to judge me?
This is a mom who is, one, very nervous because she knows she's a target for looks and comments of disgust. Two, she feels extremely vulnerable because she's exposed. Moms don't enjoy having their breasts out, but often there is no other way because the baby just wouldn't eat if he's covered up. Three, she might even feel some level of guilt because she doesn't want to put people in awkward positions either. She's not looking for confrontation. So she's putting up with all this judgment and stress for one single reason, because the importance of her infant's health outweighs her own discomfort, up to a point. There comes a point where these nudges become too unbearable and they push her to give up breastfeeding. And this would describe many mothers, actually. There are, of course, moms who have higher tolerance for confrontation and would bite back, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
I explained to my girlfriend that it isn't the rack sighting that annoys us, obviously, since most of us guys enjoy a nice set. It's more just the public nature of witnessing a baby drink its dinner off its mother's udders. Yeah. He goes, I felt like a chump because I was having trouble explaining why it's not okay to publicly breastfeed. No, it's okay to do it, but like you have the right to look at it and be grossed out.
Yes, it is your right to be grossed out. This lad is describing his instinctive reaction. He is not choosing to feel this way, and of course not guilty of it. And I understand his resistance to be required to feel differently on command. This is not something I would argue, but there is something about perception. His instinctive reaction of being grossed out is much less set in stone than he thinks. Think of seeing a drunk throwing up on the street, for example. You are grossed out and disgusted by the person. That's it. Now think of someone throwing up on the street who you know is struggling with a serious illness. You might still have the instinctive reaction of being grossed out by the sight itself, but your compassion for that ill person immediately shifts your reaction into a place of empathy. And that reaction comes just as instinctively as being grossed out. We all have a strong empathy for matters of health, because this is something we all experience ourselves and in relation to our loved ones, and so we relate to it with empathy. And breastfeeding is a matter of health. Breastfeeding is a matter of avoiding adverse health problems. By not freaking out to see a breast, you directly help that baby avoid serious health problems. How? Every time a mom catches a glimpse of a disgusted face, it's a nudge for her to stop breastfeeding. It's only so much one can take from these looks before giving up. Once you know that your reaction has such a direct impact on the infant's health, the empathy will shift your perception from seeing a breast to seeing your role in keeping that baby healthy. There exists a problem that the sight of breastfeeding is very unfamiliar for the public and catches people off guard. Men enjoy seeing a breast, that's a fact, and nothing wrong with that. But we live in a culture where breast is sexy, is being hyped non-stop. Even when they don't seek it out, guys are constantly bombarded by images from music videos, advertisements, social media posts, even the way we dress to keep them constantly engaged with this thought. So this lad is walking down the street, buzzing from the millions of different images of breasts being sexy, and out of nowhere sees a baby breastfeeding on his mom's boobs, something he barely ever sees, and totally catches him off guard. I totally understand why it has become so much harder for guys to react appropriately in the moment and disassociate breastfeeding from the constant breast is sexy hype. And this hype is not gonna ease up anytime soon. This is where public health organizations have a ton of work to do by running post campaigns and making the site itself familiar for people and linking that image with the health implications so that people can relate to it with empathy.
Could use some ammo in this argument, and I'm interested in hearing my favorite comedian rant about this subject. I have a feeling
you just can't have a difference of opinion.
Hey, can you be an adult? Can you be an adult and let me finish reading this?
Why he's got to put it like he needs ammo in this thing. Like, you just disagree. It's fine.
Are you done?
Can I have some ammo so I can slap my girlfriend upside the head with some facts, man? Some male facts.
As opposed to what? Female facts?
Yeah, we're the ones doing it.
Hey.
So, and let me just, I'm just going to
Can I just finish the thing?
No.
Okay.
I'm going to say right now, okay? Just because you have found that there are most women who wouldn't just whip it out and breastfeed in public, and it's the same. A lot of women I know wouldn't feel comfortable doing. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing. I would want to cover myself up. But if a woman is not covered up, I support her right in doing that. So just because we wouldn't do it ourselves personally doesn't mean that we're not going to want it for other people. Shit happens. That kid's hungry. You don't always have your scarf or your cover up or whatever. And this kid is screaming and crying and you're stressed out. Here, put a tit in its mouth and so it'll be quiet and be fed and move on. It's not that big of a deal. You can avert your eyes and keep it moving.
Nia is lining up valid points here, but all of these remain within the commonly held view that breastfeeding is a thing that's important for the mother and that we are the ones doing her a favor. This needs a total rebranding, and it can only come from public health organizations. Those mothers are literally performing a public health service. They are busy reducing the risk of adverse health problems like type 1 diabetes, infectious morbidity, chronic diseases. They are busy reducing waiting times in children's hospital by having a healthier infant. They are busy reducing taxpayers' money spent on public health expenses. And here's a figure to make you sit down. Suboptimal breastfeeding rates cost the US economy $13 billion per year. Looking at it this way, it does feel like that breastfeeding mothers are the ones doing society a favor.
What is the problem?
No, I'm just saying it's weird to look at.
It is a little off-putting to be like, oh, she's breastfeeding, but like, move on, get over it. It's literally a second of your life.
Well, that's what. Listen. That's what he did.
He doesn't need ammo. So then why is he writing?
Hey, take your voice down, Nia. Take your voice down. Don't act like me.
Ammo in order to come back to his girlfriend with, these pearls of wisdom.
Because he's young and he thinks he's actually going to change your fucking mind. Because he should have just said, "Hey, fair enough. Agree to disagree." Look, all he did was he fucking looked at it and he had his natural fucking reaction, which of course feminists are going to say, "No, man, that's not the natural reaction. That was put into you by the males that run society." And boop, boop, boop.
And now we arrived to feminism. Okay, I am going to make a big statement here and give some explanation for it. Breastfeeding should not be a feminist issue. It is an infant health issue and belongs to the public health domain. At the moment, it is considered mainly a feminist issue, and it is a huge problem. Here is why. Breastfeeding starts in the hospitals where it is a high priority health matter. There is extensive amount of support to encourage it and to establish it. Then mom goes home and breastfeeding becomes a social, cultural matter. Not because it has become any less of a high priority health matter, but because it now has to exist in the social, cultural, economic reality that surrounds the mother. While there are excellent advocacy groups and support groups for breastfeeding itself, the mom has to tackle the social, cultural confrontations herself, making her the poster girl for breastfeeding, the educator, the enforcer of the right, and the target for society because society is not prepared. Does the mom want any of these roles? No. Is she equipped to do them? No. Should it be her to carry those roles at all? No. But nobody else does. Nobody else does the task of preparing society. In an ideal world, public health organizations would educate and guide the public to the point where they understand that breastfeeding is a high priority health matter and would be capable to embrace it as a societal effort where they have a role to play. Since this doesn't exist, all of this falls on the breastfeeding mothers, and with that, the issue of breastfeeding is thrown at the mercy of any social cultural forces that sweep it up and run with it for better or worse. In this case, it inevitably lands with feminism, and this is for the worse. Picture this scenario. The mom is breastfeeding in public, a few disapproving looks or comments pop up. This mom doesn't shy away from a confrontation, not that she's trained to handle it or anything. So for the most, she just bites back about the right she has to breastfeed in public because that's pretty much the only tool that she has at her disposal. But this rings exactly like a feminist making a feminist comment, right? So now the label is live, and soon enough, feminism is established as the advocator for this issue. As feminism cements itself around breastfeeding, the following things happen. 1. Any breastfeeding mother now has to carry yet another very confrontational label, whether they want it or not. Of course, as a result, more moms shy away from breastfeeding in public, silently pushing down the rates of breastfeeding. 2. All the controversy and resentment that exists for feminism is now associated with breastfeeding too. Those who didn't even care about breastfeeding but didn't like feminist issues now know exactly how to feel about breastfeeding, right? 3. It invites the extremists to the table who will look for any opportunity and any new segment of population to call freaks or pervs. 4. So now breastfeeding is also used as a vehicle for common feminist arguments like the one Bill mentioned before about it being a man's society. 5. Since breastfeeding is rebranded as a feminist issue, the health aspect of it is pretty much erased in the eye of the public, pushing society even further away from the common ground of health, where they could relate to breastfeeding with empathy. I will play out the rest of the conversation without stopping now. Just listen to it, keeping in mind the points that I made about the breast is sexy hype, how unfamiliar the sight of breastfeeding is, the word natural floating about, the health aspect completely missing from the conversation, and mostly how arguments about feminism just crush the topic of breastfeeding altogether.
Here's my thing. If they're going to sit there and talk about manspreading like the way we sit on trains, but you can fucking whip your titty out and we're supposed to be like, hey, blah, blah, we can't have a comment on that. You guys are just so, and when I say you guys, I mean feminists. Like, you guys are just so, like, looking at just one way that it's I don't know. Like, it gets, you're doing that classic thing where it starts off, it's a good cause, and then by the end of it, you come out the other side. You're not 100% what the you were fighting, but you have all like a lot of the same elements of shouting people down, not wanting to hear the rest of the guy's stuff. You want to be listened to, but this guy here is just being honest to how he feels, and it makes you feel a certain type of way, however the you say it, and then you shout it down. And
all right, fair enough.
Yeah, there you go.
Fair enough.
There you go.
And you're right. I did shout it down, and I did like cut it off because I was annoyed by it. But I think what it is that there is just this feeling of such like, I don't know. I feel like the reaction is disproportionate to what they are reacting to. I feel like a child, being fed from its mother, which is a very natural thing, and the reaction that some men have to it is so disproportionate. It's like, it's ridiculous.
What is the reaction?
To the point, the reaction is that he's comparing it to in public. That to me is disproportionate to a child feeding off its mother. Really? You think it's like
no,
public?
I thought
Sir,
I thought
really?
It was, no, he doesn't think that was a clever comeback to what she said.
It's not that clever.
It's hilarious.
It's dumb.
That just means you don't have a good comeback for. Come on, you guys. Why? You know what? I'll tell you, nothing like a fucking feminist to come along and to suck the laughter out of the room. People have a right to react.
They certainly do.
They do. Like, they look at something, they're like, ugh. Okay, the same. You're not allowed. With all of that type of that falls on the other side of the fence, you're not allowed to have your natural reaction to it. It's automatically considered that there's something fucking wrong with you and something like that. Dude, there's a lot of like, here's another thing too. Like, there's also teenage kids walking around and all of that type of shit, and you're whipping your titty out. You can't walk around topless. It's considered indecent exposure in this country. Right. Okay? There's kids walking around, blah, 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 blah. You're pulling out a titty, and then you take a little mini me of you and you stick it on the end of it. But there's something like very alien about it. But I'm not for guys. It's just weird.
I know, but the thing is,
and we have a right to feel that way. I'm not saying we're right in what we're thinking. Nobody says
Bourbon Street during Mardi Gras, and that's not as natural as it is to feed a child. Not to me.
What do you mean always say?
Nobody's on Bourbon Street at Mardi Gras when girls are flashing their tits for some like 2-cent plastic beads made in China. Then it's all good. Then it's like shots for everybody.
No, but that's what it's like.
Someone's feeding their child.
Yeah, but that's not legal.
At the goddamn airport.
It's not legal.
But you don't see men being like, "Can you believe the way she just like they're into it?" But a woman is feeding her child at the airport, and all of a sudden it's like public.
No, because all of a sudden
because
I can't even give. I got such a great example, but I can't say it.
Why not?
Yeah, you're looking at the breast, and when they're just shaking their tits or whatever, it's like, yeah, okay. And then all of a sudden there's a baby eating off of it. It's like, whoa, what the to people who don't have babies. It's weird. It freaks you out. Like, oh, yeah, that's right. They also do that. And it's also kind of fucking weird. You're just sitting there eating a sandwich, and then you look down the thing. I know, Nia. I know. The whole world needs to just be like, oh, okay, all our feelings. Like, that's how this feminist going, where it's just your guy's side is 100% right. The way you see is 100% right. And a lot of times, most of the bitching about guys had wrong, and I agree with it. But this whole thing that men cannot have opinions. You guys can tell us how to sit down on a subway, but we can't have a reaction to. Look, I don't give a if a woman breastfeeds. I don't. But like when I see some guy who has a reaction to it, and then he gets yelled at like he wants women not to be able to vote anymore, I just think it's a bit of an overreaction.
I just think that it's interesting that there are certain men who are more comfortable with seeing breasts sexualized than they are for what they are.
Stop saying sexualized like they're being exploited.
They are more accepting of seeing a woman's breast being used in a sexual manner than they are for like the purpose of what breasts are for, which is like basically to feed children.
That's not all they're for.
Because otherwise they're
that's
just
not all they're for.
Fat deposits.
No, that's not all they're for.
What do you mean that's not all they're for?
It's for the survival of mankind in that nice Iraq attracted a male, and he comes over and he bangs you, and then when you guys die, there's still other people. There's also that.
So, in other words, for like procreation.
Listen, there's no way to win this argument because women want to be attractive. You want attention, but you want it when you want it how you want it, and guys have to know exactly when that is and when it isn't. And if they don't guess right. It's like the end of a Tom Cruise movie when he's trying to clip which wire, one's going to blow it up, the other isn't. And if you don't 100% know when that thing is, then you are like, I don't know what. You're the worst person on the planet.
So what are you saying? Just shut up and take it, however you get it?
No, that's not what I'm saying. Why do you have to go to that level of extreme?
But and your Tom Cruise analogy, like the red wire or the blue wire, is not extreme?
No, I'm saying it's just like no matter what the we do, we're wrong. It's like you want to put on a push-up bra and have your tits in everybody's face. So, ladies, we're not paying for drinks tonight, right? Your little skirt barely covering your hoo-ha, okay? And then all of a sudden, in a blink of an eye, is what are you looking at? I'm talking about that, and you know that. You know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying, but I don't know what that has to do with breastfeeding and any of that kind of stuff. Because that's not what we're talking about.
Well, you let it into the whole thing, like, you know, you look at like sexualized breasts, where it always comes steering around to somehow
that
men
is more acceptable than a child being fed off of like the breast, and I don't understand why that is. Why that's more comfortable?
Because you're not a man.
To be like,
you're not a man.
Well, then fine, maybe that's what it is. But like, that's something that I feel like people need to get over. I would not breastfeed in public without being covered. But if a woman needs to do it, I get it, and it shouldn't.
I think people can just
anybody.
think what they think. I think people can just think what they think.
I think
I don't feel that the way I look at
the way that they think and progress a little bit. That's how we get to find a little bit more understanding between the sexes, so we don't have the same goddamn
but you know how that works
every year. It's like the same
how that
fucking
works?
argument. Like we're not getting anywhere. I don't understand.
All right, but you know how, because you know how that works, that progression thing works? The only way there's progression in it is if men see the world the way women want them to see the world. So
that I can accept that.
Okay, so that's all I'm saying. So this is another thing where it's like your guy's reaction literally to how men sit on the fucking subway is 100% validated. I can't be like, listen, I got balls. I don't want to smash them between my thighs and get over it. I don't have that option. You can be like, well, f you, I got to breastfeed my kid. Get over it. The way you look at it is, but our whole is we have to be like, oh, really? Is this issue 9,863 of this fucking month that bothers you? Like you guys are these faultless human beings. Like I said, Nia, most of that feminist I can agree with it, but like it's just every fucking day now.
Public health organizations have a ton of work to do to prepare society. They have to run poster campaigns to make the sight of breastfeeding more familiar and to link that with the health implications for the infants. They must take away the attention from the breast and focus on the health instead, so people can find a way to relate to breastfeeding with empathy. Rebrand breastfeeding as a public health service that mothers carry out, a service that reduces adverse health outcomes, that reduces waiting times in hospitals, reduces sick time, and reduces taxpayers' money spent on public health. This was our last episode for the year, so I wish you all happy holidays, and we see you back on the 16th of January.